Back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, October 8th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about President Donald Trump's approval rating as it free falls amidst a number of different scandals and issues plaguing this second administration amidst a federal government shutdown. Donald Trump's approval rating is not in a great position, and it doesn't lend itself to allowing Republicans to do their best in the 2025 elections and potentially even the 2026 midterm elections. On your screen right now is Nate Silver's aggregate of Donald Trump's approval rating. He does it here on the Silver Bulletin that we are going to be comparing directly with data points with groups like Gallup, which do polls every few weeks, surveying the president of the United States' approval rating. They've been doing it for decades on end. G. Elliott Morris also has his own aggregate of Donald Trump's approval rating nationwide, as well as looking at Real Clear Politics, and even Donald Trump's favorite pollster, Rasmussen, reports that can't seem to find Donald Trump being more popular than unpopular on the national stage, despite it being one of the best performing polls for Donald Trump in the past 6 months. Now, Donald Trump's approval rating hasn't been too hot for a variety of different reasons, but the most recent thing that has made it difficult for the Republicans to keep Donald Trump above water has arguably been this government shutdown and the Epstein files and a variety of different issues that have come around to congressional Republicans that have not been benefiting the President of the United States the way it once did, leading into not only the end of the summer, but also into the prime season of the 2025 elections here, thinking about what happens when it comes down to the Virginia governor's race, the New Jersey governor's race, the New York mayoral election, Proposition 50 in California. If there was any hope or expectation that Republicans would do quite well, it would rely on everything going their way. But with Donald Trump's approval rating largely cratering, it's quite difficult to see how exactly that's going to happen. And so really, when we look at, the federal approval rating for Donald Trump and also congressional Republicans, it makes us realize that the American public that might have given Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt in the beginning of this second administration may no longer be believing that Donald Trump is on a pathway to anything positive for Americans nationwide. His approval rating has been negative ever since mid-March of 2025 and certainly doesn't look like it's on the pathway to recovery. When we're looking at the 2025 elections, I think they will be a great indicator of what the 2026 midterms might look like should Donald Trump's approval rating maintain itself at such a low point. Now, Nate Silver's numbers show Donald Trump about -9 nationwide, but when we look everywhere else, the numbers are either slightly better or far worse, depending on the aggregate that we take a look at. Real Clear Politics is one of the better pollsters polling aggregates for Donald Trump here, showing him at just -7 nationwide. But when you take a look at groups like Gallup, you'll see that Donald Trump's approval rating is roughly at 40% nationwide. When you take a look at groups like G. Elliott Morris's aggregate here, you'll see that Donald Trump is down by about 13 points. These are all things that when it comes down to, depending on where you're looking, no matter how you cut it, where you look, how you look, Donald Trump's approval rating is in the negative. And so thinking about the way that that is going to be broadcast across the country, American voters clearly know that Donald Trump is unpopular and it's only going to get worse. When you actually take a look at the data that is driving Donald Trump's approval rating down, a lot of it has to do with the same issues that he championed in the 2024 presidential election when he defeated Vice President Kamala Harris largely on a platform surrounding social issues, immigration, and the economy. The same exact issues that today Donald Trump finds himself significantly underwater. His overall job approval rating, according to CBS's most recent survey, which had him at -12 in September, and in a position that was roughly as bad as it is today back in July, he's down about 16 points nationwide. But when you actually tackle exactly the issues that are driving him downward, you have to look, again, those same exact issues I just mentioned. His handling of immigration, the economy, and inflation, all negative. On inflation, he's down 30. On the economy, he's down 20. And on immigration, the issue that seems to be the most polarizing, might I say, of Donald Trump's administration, the one that has been the most broadcast very publicly, the mass deportations now, the ICE raids in different parts of the country, the nationalization of police force to accompany and aid with ICE enforcement, immigration, he's down 10 points nationwide. For context, Biden only won the 2020 election on a 4.5-point margin. So if 10% more of this nation is disapproving of the job that Donald Trump is doing on immigration, and 20% more of the nation is disapproving of the job that Donald Trump is doing on the economy, And 30% of this nation, more of this nation, is disapproving of the job that Donald Trump is doing on inflation. It's negative, 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 and we see it clear as day, and something that is quite bad for the President of the United States for very obvious reason. When it comes down to financial policies, how do voters perceive Donald Trump's policies impacting them with their pocketbooks and as it pertains to their everyday expenses? Just 32% of Americans believe that Trump's policies are making them financially the same. And the status quo isn't necessarily popular. But even a smaller fraction, 17% of this country, say that Trump's policies are making them better off financially. And 51% of this nation, keep in mind, Kamala Harris only received 48% of the vote in the last cycle. 51% say that Donald Trump's policies are making them worse off financially with what he's doing with his second administration. And when they ask, is the Trump administration's focus on lowering prices X, Y, or Z? 75% of Americans say they are not doing enough. 75%. Insanity. These are numbers straight out of an electoral landslide that would suggest that if not enough was a candidate, would win every single state against the President of the United States. And that isn't to say that these numbers are going to directly translate into a demolishing lead for the Democratic Party, but it doesn't hurt when the President of the United States is finding themselves consistently and constantly falling out of national approval. And something that just seems to be a side note, which we're not going to get into today, but I certainly think we will sometime in the near future, is that when we look at the way that voters describe Donald Trump or engage with him in a way that, they see him as either tough or energetic or effective or competent, these numbers have gotten a lot closer. On the question, is Donald Trump energetic, 63% of voters in February said yes. Today, that's down to 51%. On focused, even if you didn't like the president, oftentimes a number of Democrats here had said that they see it as 60% of all voters say that they see him as focused. Just 49% today say that's the case. On effective, even if you didn't like him, a lot of voters felt as if his style of governance was effective and was able to make things go left, right, and center. 58% of Americans described him as effective. Just 47% of Americans agree today. So, when we look at these numbers, they're all smaller, they're all worse for the president, and it really does impact his reputation when voters decide to radically change the way they see him. When we're looking, not only as it pertains to Donald Trump's approval, but also I'm simultaneously thinking about what it means for the 26 midterms, what it means for the generic ballot. It only gets worse for Donald Trump, and that only benefits the opposition party, because that's the way that American elections work. Looking at the 26 House races, looking at the 26 Senate races on the margins, and on the races that are going to find themselves to be the most competitive. Everything can make or break an election, and Donald Trump's approval rating just simply is not helping. As we continue to get closer between now and November of 25, in about 30 days, less than that actually, the biggest takeaway I think we will see, especially if the data is correct in suggesting that Republicans might just be a few points away from winning the New Jersey governor's race for the first time in a while, since 2013, but also in an election the Democrats should be doing quite well. But because Republicans have done well for themselves in New Jersey, there has been this long conversation with Jack Ciattarelli. Can he actually take on Mikey Sherrill? The answer is maybe, but only if the stars align. And there's a big constellation messing up this whole viewing point for the GOP that is Donald Trump's approval rating. And the trend line is negative, negative, negative. And it is Donald Trump who stands out as the glaring example of Republican leadership nationwide that voters do not want to see replicated in their swing House district, do not want to see replicated in their swing Senate seat, do not want to see replicated in their competitive governor's race. Because a big reason why many of these Republicans are falling flat on their face when it comes down to performance against Democrats like Abigail Spanberger, like Mikey Sherrill, is because Donald Trump is really this huge, perception problem for the GOP that no Republican can shake their association with a president whose approval rating is arguably extremely unpopular. And looking at it relative to where it was in his first term, not at all a great place to be. And so Donald Trump, who, at different periods of time had been outpacing Joe Biden, outpacing his own numbers, never really outpacing Joe Biden, but maybe by the end of Joe Biden's term, when we take a look at the data, as it has trended and as it has been, changing over time, when we take a look at where we're at, Donald Trump in his first term was only doing about 3 points worse than where Trump is doing today. And so as much as Trump came into office with a plus 12 approval rating, the highest he had seen in a while, and Biden left office extremely unpopular, right, to numbers that were similar to that of Trump's first term, the fact remains Trump is more unpopular today than Biden was 4 years ago. And we saw that what eventually led to the defeat for Biden on the national stage, not Biden, but Harris, in response to Biden and his unpopularity, because voters started to very quickly sour on Biden, and they've already done so for Trump in a way that is very similar to that of the first term. And even compared to any other president besides himself, Trump is more unpopular than any singular president at this point in time. More unpopular with data going all the way back to Dwight Eisenhower in the 1950s. Donald Trump is only, and only barely, outperforming his own metrics from 2017. Because 4 years ago today, it was Biden who was down by 3. 12 years ago today, or 16 years ago today, it was Obama who was down by 12. Looking at the metrics, looking at where we were under George W. Bush, 66% approval rating. Look at where we were with Bill Clinton, plus 8. George H.W. Bush, plus 43. I mean, these are astronomically high numbers relative to where Donald Trump is today. And that's it. And looking at the 2025 cycle and looking at the 2026 cycle, if Donald Trump's approval rating does not recover, because like I said, on the issues that matter most, he is not going to recover. He is not going to be in a position where, all of a sudden, these legions of voters are going to say, I've changed my mind radically. When he's down, right, these numbers, negative 23 on inflation and cost of living, I do not imagine in a year ago from today, that his numbers are plus 10 nationwide. I do not imagine that happening because what we've seen is that he has not been able to recover in his first administration. He has not been able to recover in the past 6 months since that positive turned into a negative. And I think it would be naive to believe that he would be able to do so in a way that is at all substantive or in a way that all changes the dynamics of the race. And I do believe Donald Trump will be the biggest reason why Republicans lose not only in 2025, but likely in 2026 and potentially even, I know this feels far away, the 2028 election, because he is not a popular president, and it took a second Trump administration for voters to remember that. And I do not imagine that without any type of massive and radical change on the national stage about the state of the nation, that Donald Trump's approval rating improves, or that the numbers look better for him or the GOP on the national stage. Because as his approval rating free falls, you can really start to see that it's in a very negative position with no clear pathway upwards any time soon. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 2026 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.